And now, it's The Law Show on CL 650. A comprehensive look at everything you need to know about the law.
All right. So let's get into the next stage of this. Why do you need to have a lawyer involved with setting up your will and your estate? Because we hear ads on TV. You can get a kit and do it yourself, and it can just be simple. So explain, and then Leah can get into the pitfalls of what happens when you don't do it correctly.
Right. In a nutshell, short before long, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Right? So when we're structuring something, we might, as lay people, think, well, the most important thing here is to avoid probate, because it delays things.
Explain what probate is.
Probate is the process after a person dies where the individual who will ultimately take the assets of that deceased person into their name in trust to distribute to the beneficiaries is proven before the court. So we take a list of the assets and the will, if there is one, to the court registry, and we determine that this person is an appropriate person, that there's no objection from other family members, that this is the person actually named in the will who was trusted by the deceased. Mm-hmm. We say these are the assets that this person will have control over. Anything not included in that probate application will not flow through that person's hands. So those are the assets that this person will either liquidate or transfer in specie, as they are, to the beneficiaries. And they'll have to do an accounting to those beneficiaries. So it's a very careful process where beneficiaries know at the end of the day that they weren't missing anything. Mm-hmm. There's no assets that were wasted or lost or absconded with. So that's the probate process, is where we identify this person as a proper trustee. Mm-hmm. And only then can assets such as land or other registered assets transfer from the name of the deceased to the name of somebody else, either a beneficiary or a buyer.
So you need that middle person to get it done.
You need that executor, or in the case of an intestacy where someone dies without a will, you need an administrator.
Okay, so what can happen if we're talking about not having it done and set up properly with the lawyer? What can happen? Where can it go sideways? What do you typically see?
It can go sideways in many ways. I think if I chose, a simple example would be choice of executor. So often we'll have people come in where a person has chosen 3 executors that all have to act together. And maybe it's 3 children and they have not gotten along their entire lives.
Right.
And they've now have a will that says they have to do everything by agreement among one another. And
so is that a problem? Should you choose one executor or having more than one? What do you think?
It's not necessarily a problem, but it's something that needs to be discussed with an estate planner about why have you chosen these people. Mm-hmm. And definitely multiple people carries with it different challenges. So if you can name one person, then obviously that's preferable. But a person may have a very good reason to name 2 children, for instance, and if they get along and there's no issues, maybe it isn't a problem. But the point is, it's like Elyssa was saying, you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. So having an estate planner walk you through exactly what an executor will be doing after your death might prompt you to think about whether this is the best decision.
Not the right person for that job.
Exactly.
Now, can you name a number 1 and a number 2 if the first person denies?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But when Leah's talking about what does an executor do and what is for me, it's what is the skill set that's going to be required. If my oldest child, we've always in our family named the oldest child as executor, is what I hear a lot. Mm-hmm. If my oldest child is the most emotional, the most tied to me, or the least sophisticated, the least comfortable dealing with accountants, the court registry, realtors, bankers, then that oldest child, by virtue of being the oldest, that's not actually the skill set, the tool bag that we want them to be carrying. We want to look to the person who either is maybe my sibling, if they're younger than me, if they're in good health, or a family friend, or one of the younger children. If they get along, like Leah's saying, that is one of the key selection criteria for me. But if they get along and they're sophisticated and they're comfortable and they won't find this to be too much of a burden.
So in your experience, is it better to have somebody that's not a child to go outside of the nuclear family, to go to an aunt or an uncle or somebody? Is it cleaner that way?
We see so many different circumstances. Each family is quite different, but sometimes there is problems by naming one child over the other. So you can also name a private executor. That person is paid, of course, a rate, or a family friend. But like Alyssa's saying, someone that's sophisticated, someone that's able to deal with these kinds of matters easier than an overly emotional child, or choosing one child over the others may cause problems.